So Captain Marvel is set to be the 21st installment in the Marvel movie franchise, premiering in the US on March 8th. Oh, sorry, wrong photo. Captain Marvel is now a female, because diversity. Now, I have to admit to having superhero movie fatigue. I still watch them, but I rarely go to the cinema to see them, and I doubt I'll be parting with my hard-earned to see this one either. And no, it's not because it has a female lead. I'm just not that interested. I saw the trailer and decided, meh. And I tell you what won't convince me to change my mind is the fact that a couple of days ago, the star of the movie Brie Larson told Entertainment Tonight, quote, "I had a meeting with Marvel and what we discussed is they wanted to make a big feminist movie." Which I'm sure is music to the ears of the mostly male audience that watches Marvel movies. The Hollywood Reporter describes Brie Larson as a fierce gender equality activist, which of course means that she's for equality of outcome wherever women are the minority in an occupational category. You see, Larson is one of those reductionist simpletons that thinks if an occupational category doesn't perfectly reflect the demographic makeup of the country, then it must be corrected. You see, like all feminists, Larson believes she knows better what people should do with their lives, and of course she's only concerned with occupations where women are underrepresented and the job isn't dangerous, dirty, or undesirable. How do we know this? Well, in a recent interview with Marie Claire, Larson relayed her lived experience. "About a year ago, I started paying attention to what my press days look like and the critics reviewing movies, and noticed it appeared to be overwhelmingly white male.
You're fucking a white male!
So I spoke to Dr. Stacey Smith at the USC Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, who put together a study to confirm that. Moving forward, I decided to make sure my press days were more inclusive. After speaking with you, the film critic Valerie Complex, and a few other women of colour, it sounded like across the board they weren't getting the same opportunities as others. When I talked to the facilities that weren't providing it, they all had different excuses. Oh, and by the way, the interviewer was disabled, black, and female, which she mentions at the top of the interview because apparently that's relevant for your audience to know when interviewing movie stars. Notice that no proof has been provided to substantiate the claim that women of colour are not getting the same opportunities, it's just asserted, and because we have to believe all women, it must be true. Now, you have to give it to Larson. She has superhuman powers of observation. It turns out, according to the aforementioned study, which looked at the race and gender of movie critics that reviewed the top 100 films of 2017, that 78% were male and 64% were white males.
You're a white man!
You know, I was in hospital last year and noticed that the nurses were overwhelmingly female. And guess what? They were. Where's my superhero film? The report also claims that women of colour are apparently written off as critics since they represent just 4% of the total. But that's not quite the full story, is it? You see, those numbers were based on counting the race and gender of the author of every review written. So if men write more reviews, then the percentage of males will be higher. If you scroll down a page, you get the actual percentages of all critics by race and gender. Notice that the white male percentage of all reviews written is 10% higher than the number of white male critics. Why? Because on average, they write more reviews. White females write less on average, minority males write about the same, and minority females, well, they write significantly less on average. But of course, this being advocacy research, rule number one is always lead off with the most misleading statistics. Further down the report, we find that 87% of minority female critics write less than 10 reviews, as opposed to 61% of white males. To put this in perspective, let's say that hypothetically there are 100 critics. That would mean there would be 53 white male critics, 23 white females, 15 minority males, and 9 minority females. Now let's say collectively they write a total of 1,000 movie reviews. That would mean that on average white male critics wrote 12 reviews, while females a little less than 8, minority males over 9, and minority females on average write about 4.5 reviews each. So there's your first problem, ladies. Time to up your work ethic. But number of reviews written aside, why are there twice as many male film critics as females?
The patriarchy.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it's just that men are more likely to be interested in doing that kind of work.
But females are the majority of moviegoers.
Yeah, but as Coltane has pointed out, that's only because they're far more likely to be the parent accompanying their child to see a children's movie. More men than women reported having attended all the Marvel movies. Captain America was almost 60-40 men to women. So you'd expect more males to write reviews about superhero films, but of course it's one thing to watch a movie, quite another to be interested in writing a review about it. Of course, these self-described gender activists like Larson will assume it must be some form of institutionalized sexism, for which they provide no evidence. So let me give you some evidence that might help explain why men are more likely to be movie critics. Heather McDonald, author of the book The Diversity Delusion, a fantastic read by the way, was recently interviewed by Bettina Arndt, and she discussed her research into domains in which men are the majority of contributors, but there are no gatekeepers, or in other words, sexism can't explain the disparity in representation.
So Wikipedia is open to all comers. Anybody can write an entry. Anybody can edit an entry. It's blind. It's anonymous. It turns out that only 13% of Wikipedia editors and writers are females. Again, there are no gatekeepers. Nobody is keeping females from writing. It turns out that males naturally are more interested in these fact-based realms of competition, of getting things right. We've seen this already. You know, people like Susan Estridge, one of our professional feminists in the United States, has complained about the fact that our op-ed pages, our opinion pages in newspapers are not, or were not, before the massive introduction of gender quotas, 50-50 female to male writers. Well, it turns out that who's submitting op-ed submissions? Males at about 2/3 to 1/3 females. Same for letters to the editor.
And so Brie Larson says she's going to make sure her press days are more inclusive. But what does that mean exactly? Is she simply going to invite more minority females, or does it mean excluding white males? Or both? Since minority females write less than half the reviews of white males, will they be able to cope with the extra work? Also, will Brie Larson be lobbying for more female representation in coal mining, garbage collection and sewage treatment work? Somehow, I doubt it. As I've often noted, in order to be a feminist, you have to have that part of your brain that regulates hypocrisy and consistency removed. But perhaps that's unfair. She can't affect those other industries, but she can use her position as an A-list movie star to affect the movie industry. So with that in mind, I want to encourage Brie Larson to take notice of the number of makeup artists and costume designers on movie sets and use her significant influence to correct these obviously sexist injustices. But let's imagine for a moment that we do see a significant change in the demographic makeup of movie critics and that your movie reviews reflect more diverse voices, waxing lyrical about Bechdel tests and intersectionality. How will that turn out, I wonder?
Cherry Picks is a website where you can go and see what women think about media.
The media landscape has been so skewed for so long.
We will be cherry picking the female critical voice out of publications, and we will be putting them all in one group to come up with our own scoring system.
Well, who can say? But we have seen this movie before, pun intended, and it didn't work out so well. But don't despair, unemployed movie critics, just like unemployed BuzzFeed and Huffington Post opinion writers, can create a whole new career for themselves if they would just knuckle down and learn to code. I'll see you next time.